Hi everyone, I'm Neil Harding and welcome to Property Insight.
I'm Mark Ashworth, welcome.
Today we're going to talk about energy performance certificates, EPCs, and Mark gets to say the biggest I told you so with a big smile on his face that he has ever done in his entire life.
Oh my God.
Go on Mark, go on.
Okay, well, we told you so, it's been scrapped. Yes, this C rating that people have been getting their knickers in the proverbial twist in the last 2 or 3 years, finally Rishi has come to his senses, as have the government. So yeah, I mean, what was it, 3-4 years ago? All this nonsense about EPCs having to be a C. Oh, by the way, it's a white paper, it's just proposed, we're just talking about it, it's all in consultation, all this stuff. And everybody was saying, what are we going to do to get our properties to a C? And in fact, it came up a lot at our property networking meeting. Many people were, There was almost every month there was a question about what are we going to do about EPCs? To which I was saying nothing. That what is the point of doing anything until it comes into legislation, it becomes law? Why are you reacting like this? Because when they put something into law, typically when it comes to compliance, they want you to have enough time to make sure that you've got the time to put everything right. Could be 3 years, 2 years, and obviously at the time they were saying 2025, and that was probably back in, I don't know, what was it, 2020, 21? I don't know, I can't even remember what year it was, but it seemed to be quite a long way off. And so therefore, if they were going to make a proposal law and it was going to come in, they would give you a considerable amount of time. How ridiculous is it? Because yes, most of the rental stock, we've got some stats. In actual fact, I'm not going to lie to you, 2 weeks ago, Neil and I recorded a 10-minute video on EPCs about this very issue, and we've not been able to publish it because 2 days later, Rishi comes on and scraps the rules.
It took me months to convince Mark to record that session for YouTube.
I didn't want to do it.
With Mark saying, no, there's no point in doing it. It's just a white paper. It's not the law. It probably never will be the law in a way. Why is everyone talking about it? And I said, well, we need to talk about it because lots of people want to talk about it. People are concerned about it. And I was a little bit more circumspect, as you can tell, than Mark was about this subject. And in the end, I managed to convince you. And no joke, we were sat here, we did the session, we recorded it, and an hour later in the news, Rishi Sunak announced that he's scrapping. I didn't know it was that soon. And I was, oh my God, I owe Mark.
Anyway, so look, guys, if you've got these properties out there, not to say that you shouldn't make an effort to make them energy efficient, of course, that should be on your radar without a doubt. But the fact is, there are literally hundreds of homes up and down the country which are typically old Victorian mid-terraced properties. All those properties that, I lived in one when I was younger. Many families did in these smaller houses that are very, very, very common these days for buy-to-let properties because they suit small families that are old and they cannot be brought up to the energy performance standards of new build properties.
We've got a stat here from the Department of Levelling Up. So 2.26 million homes that are let in the UK are currently of an EPC rating D or below. Mm-hmm. Of those, 478,000 of those homes in the private rental sector today are not capable of reaching a grade C. I don't think it's any great surprise that Rishi Sunak's taken a U-turn on this.
And I think the average grade across the whole country is D anyway. Taking into account all of the housing stock. And what's been happening, so the last few years, and certainly now, the rental market's gone crazy. I wonder how many landlords and how many property investors have been selling up and removing and reducing their portfolios as a result of this potential measure that was going to come in. I know a lot of people have spent money on their properties and they've made an effort to make them up to a C at least, but I reckon there's a very high percentage of people who have been moving their stock on, or certainly let's say the stock that may be around about an E, because they're just kind of thinking, well, what's the point? I'm not going to spend 10 grand on this property. Do you know what? I'll just sell it. Removing another one from the rental market, making the rental market more difficult to get into.
I think the government would have done landlords and tenants a big favour by adding this clarity a lot earlier, years ago.
But it's interesting though, because I think what's happened, and we won't spend too long talking about this now, I think we've just all got to move on. But I think that the interesting thing that's happened now, it took a lot of research already by the fact that the government wanted to introduce these measures, there's lots of companies and people and organisations and associations of the industry that have basically done the research now for the government to say, actually, this isn't a practicable approach to trying to save or let's say meet the net zero kind of policy that the government has. And so without the white paper, none of the research would have been done. And so therefore now they've had the results, they've done the work, they've done the effort, they've done the research. Now I think they've realised that actually it's a very inefficient way of trying to achieve a particular result.
Yeah, it's a good point. I suppose the announcement of the requirement triggered the drive for research, which fed data, which circled back into the original decision, which actually meant, actually that's not a great decision after all.
So I think maybe, you know, it's done its job, but obviously it's triggered a lot of information and discussion, and they've taken on board that information and discussion, and in my opinion they've come up with what seems to be the most logical approach. That all being said, we're not suggesting in any shape or form that you shouldn't try to make your property energy efficient. Of course, we should all be trying to do that, and there's some pretty simple things that you can do, like making sure that all the radiators have got thermostatic valves, adding some more loft insulation into the property, ensuring that you've got energy efficient light bulbs and LED lighting across the whole of the property, perhaps getting some external or internal wall insulation on maybe outside walls, making sure that you make use of any grants that might be available for more vulnerable tenants. So I think if you're on a certain income or under a certain income, even if you're a tenant, you can apply for a grant to get a more energy efficient boiler, for example. All those kind of things.
That's a really good point, because of course there is still a requirement out there that's been there for years now that a let property does need to be a grade E. So if you're thinking about letting a property out and maybe it's an F, then there's some great ideas there on how you can improve the energy efficiency to increase, or even if you want to go from an E to a D or so on, improve the energy efficiency, keeps happier tenants, warmer houses, keeps fuel bills down for tenants. Also, as always, really important to be compliant. You do need to have an E as a minimum. That's going to continue now, as we know it, for the foreseeable future. And if you're not compliant, people can be fined, I think it's up to £5,000 for non-compliance. So do take it seriously. I think that's everything that we wanted to share with you. I hope that's been insightful, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.